We are looking at God's view of time, and we're asking how does He view our time in this world. And very often, as we've been saying, when we start talking about time, we start talking about time management, which means hours and minutes. And we've been saying that that's really the wrong place to start with biblical wisdom. We have been really attacking the modern view of time over the last few weeks. We're attacking it because it has a false and deceptive optimism about progress and about what is possible, what our job is to change the world, and all of these kinds of things that we say to ourselves. Ideology is the great lure of modern times into folly and away from the wisdom of God. Ideology of left and right, it is the prescription for ruin, because it all fails to account for the fact that this is a fallen world. It is a dying world. And we need salvation from this world. And until we understand that, we can't really understand time, what time is about, what our time on earth is about. And so we're starting with those thoughts. And this morning we're going to talk about the ultimate limit on time. We think of our time being limited in terms of hours. There's only so many hours in the day. And we think in terms of our limited minutes. How much can we accomplish in 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 45 minutes? And that really is not the problem of the limitation of time in our life. The real problem of time being limited is the Bible's measurement of time, and really the most common unit of measurement in time in the Bible is the generation, lifetimes. That's how the Bible measures time. It's how the Bible measures history. Yes, it talks about days and months and years. But when you really get down to it, how does the Bible structure the story of redemption and how the world really escapes sin and death, and how we really come to be part of the kingdom of God? How does that really happen, and when does it really happen? It's measured in generations. It's not measured in hours, and it's not measured in minutes. And so we are landing in one of the classic passages of Scripture this morning about the ultimate limit on our time, and that is the lifetime. It is Ecclesiastes 12. And at the end of this meditation about the vanity of the world and the vanity of work, the vanity of pleasure, the vanity of wisdom itself in this life, how you can invest all that you have in all of these things, and it's all just vapor. It's going to disappear on you. And at the end of this, Solomon, the human author of Ecclesiastes, basically says, okay, so what are you going to do about this? What are we going to do in light of the fact that our lives are limited, our time on earth is limited, and that all we accomplish in a lifetime is taken from us at the end of that life? What are we going to do about that? That's what Ecclesiastes 12 is about. And what we have here is a confrontation with the ultimate reality of human life in this world, and that is death. So we're going to face it. We're going to look at what Solomon says, and Solomon is just speaking through the power of the Spirit of God here, and he is speaking for another shepherd, another preacher. And we'll talk about that as we go through the sermon this morning. Who is he really speaking for, and therefore who is really speaking to us about the limits of our life? And so let's look at this. The perspective that comes to us in Ecclesiastes 12, you can think of in maybe three different ways. First of all, the perspective is cosmic. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw near, of which you will say, I have no pleasure in them. And then we're going to get a repetition of this word before. In other words, before all of these things happen in your life, remember your Creator. In advance of all of these developments in your life, before they happen, remember your Creator. So we begin with these cosmic events. Verse 2, before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars are darkened and the clouds return after the rain. So he takes us all the way out into space and says there is going to come a day when all of that goes dark. Before that happens, remember your Creator in your youth. So there's this idea that the entire created order is going to come to an end. It has a lifespan, and God controls that lifespan, and He is going to turn off the lights at a certain point, and it's done, and He starts something else. And so right out of the gate in Ecclesiastes 12, he's telling us it's not just your lifetime that's at issue here, it's the lifetime of the entire cosmos, the sun, the moon, and the stars. But there's also this irony here that the sun and the light and the moon and the stars go dark for every person who dies. Your connection with the world we live in is severed. And so there's a sense in which with every passing of every person, the sun and the moon and the stars go dark for somebody. And they will not see those things again until they are resurrected and that light comes through in a completely different way. So there's a sense of the cosmic scope of these cycles of death and life. Paul says in Romans 8 that the entire universe, the entire cosmos, is subjected to futility until the revealing of those who are redeemed in Jesus Christ. Solomon here is touching on much the same kind of truth. So you can look at it from a cosmic perspective. You can also look at it from a civic perspective. I'll dwell on this with you for some time. Look at these images. Verse 3, before the day when the keepers of the house tremble, and the strong men are bent. What is he talking about here? He's talking about your city. He's talking about your civic life, the life of a nation. When those who keep the house, they tend it, they repair it, they manage it, they supply it, the keepers of the house start to tremble. And why would that be? Well, because maybe the house itself is in disrepair and about to fall down. And maybe it's because the supply that keeps the house running is cut off. Maybe it's because there are threats, like fires that threaten the house, or floods. Maybe it's because there is a failure of the people in the house, and the keepers of the house start to say, this is not going to go well. Can you identify with what is being described here? When the keepers of the house start to tremble. We're in that kind of time as a country for a variety of reasons. No matter which side of the political spectrum you're coming from, the keepers of the house are trembling. And why is that? Well, there are so many reasons. And what can we do about it? Not very much. Because we're in the grip of things that are larger than us. We're in the grip of a world that is fallen, and it affects us. The fallenness of this world presses in on us. Before the keepers of the house tremble, and the strong men are bent. You know, there's something happening all over the world, all over the Western world, Eastern world, whether it's Europe or Asia or here. And that is that populations are getting older. And the number of young people, the number of births is falling. And we're headed for a kind of demographic crisis where the number of births are not keeping up with the number of deaths. Pretty soon, the strong men are going to be bent. Before that happens, remember your Creator. Another image here. Before the grinders cease, because they are few. Who are the grinders? Those are the people who, after the harvest, they grind up the flour and they make it useful. They take all of the harvest, they grind it up so that people can eat. When the grinders are few and the grinding ceases, that means the future is ceasing. So before that happens, and those who look through the windows are dimmed. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe the population is fading, maybe aging, maybe this sense that those who are looking out on the city are kind of becoming faint. But whatever it is, before that happens, you have work to do. And the doors on the street are shut. Why would you shut the doors on the street? Because you're afraid. And you don't want people coming in. We forget the luxury of not locking your doors. It's an amazing thing that there was a time, commonly in society, when you just didn't lock your doors. You left your key in your car because you were not afraid. And we are afraid. So the doors in the street are shut. And the sound of grinding is low, and one rises up at the sound of a bird. And all the daughters of song are brought low. Remember COVID? Remember the pandemic? Remember the pictures of city streets empty? Remember that sense of vacancy in life? That there was not just a disease, but there was an affliction of an entire society that had decided to stop and shut down. And so we have this picture here of something that we know well. That when there's a noise out there, everybody kind of, what was that? It's just a bird. But you've got a society that's just on edge because there is a sense of vacancy. He goes on here. They are afraid also of what is on high. They're afraid of the mountains, what's going to come down out of the mountains and attack us. And terrors are in the way. You go out on the road, there's bad stuff out there, so don't go out. The almond tree blossoms. Oh, I did it. I wasn't going to say almond. Almond is the correct pronunciation of that fruit. We grow almonds in Chico, California, my hometown, and that's what we call them. We call them almonds. I said this once at Southern Seminary, and they gave me so much grief. And I said, I am not taking this from you here in Louisville. We got our correct pronunciation of things, and you're just going to abide by it. The funny thing is that people in Chico still say almond joy when they're referring to the campus. I don't know why that is. But anyway, the almond tree blossoms. Why would he mention that? Because it's kind of a symbol of blossoming out of time. The almond tree blossoms in February, right about now, actually. And so it's cold and it's dark and it's raining and spring? What is this? The almond tree blossoms out of time. And so when something good does happen, it's kind of at the wrong time. It's weird. What's going on? The grasshopper drags itself along, and desire fails because man is going to his eternal home, and the mourners go about in the streets. This is civic life failing. So, on a cosmic scale, the universe has a lifespan. Our city has a lifespan. Cities die. Cities shut down. And the most dramatic example of this that I ever saw was something I've talked about frequently, the fires in Paradise, California, an entire town of 28,000 people burned to the ground in 5 hours. Like the fires we've been hearing about in Los Angeles, that was Paradise. I haven't told you about driving around Paradise once they opened it up and once you could get back up there. And this was, we drove around there probably 4 months after the fact. This was a town that I knew from childhood. It had this cozy feeling because there were all these pine trees and there was all this old construction. It was kind of a funky, sort of run-down place. But it was a place that we would go to, and we had friends up there, and so I knew that town. When you go back to a town that has been burned to the ground, and suddenly everything that was kind of closed in and sheltered and cozy is now wide open, and there's nothing left. No walls, the building's all broken down. The fire was so hot it melted septic tanks underground. And it was the most powerful image to me of something that anybody who had been through a war, like in Ukraine or perhaps World War II or anywhere else, would know all too well. The landscape of a destroyed city, where everything that was built, everything that was treasured, everything that was stored up, everything that was protected and maintained, is gone. This is very hard. It's a shock. But I am headed somewhere with this. And so is Solomon. So there is a civic lifespan. But then there are poetic images of the end of an individual's life. Look at verse 6. You can look at it this way. Before the silver cord is snapped. What is the silver cord? I don't know. Look up that word cord, and it's kind of a strange word. It can mean a rope. It can also mean a band, like your company, your people. And it's kind of like if that silver band that unites you to the other people around you, your friends, your family, when that band is snapped. Before that, or the golden bowl is broken. Again, what is this? I don't know. It's a golden bowl. It's valuable, and somebody broke it. Before that happens, before that thing gets shattered, remember your Creator. This is maybe associated with something at the temple. There were these pillars at the temple that had bowls on the capital of them. They were all covered in gold in Solomon's temple. He may be saying, before that gets broken and your life ends, or the pitcher is shattered at the fountain. Well, that's clear. If you're at the fountain, you break your pitcher, what use is all that water down there in the well? You can't get it. Even if you can pull it up, you can't carry it anyway because you broke your pitcher. The supply of life is broken before that. And the dust returns to the earth as it was. What's that about? That's obviously an allusion back to Genesis. Dust you are, says the Creator. I made you from dust, and to dust you shall return. This is death. And the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. We'll comment on that more in a moment. What is Ecclesiastes 12 saying? It's saying there's a lifespan, and that's how God measures time. He measures it by generations. Generations come and generations go. There are babies and there are funerals. And if you want to understand time and what to do with it, understand the span of your life. The universe has a span. Your city has a span. Your nation has a lifespan. And you have a lifespan. So what do? It's tempting maybe to say, boy, this is so hopeless. I mean, he keeps saying, it's all vanity. What's the point? Who can stand up against this? Well, part of the mission of Ecclesiastes is to say, you can either maintain fantasies about the way the world works, or you can understand how God redeems us out of this world. And you can understand that you have a lifespan in which to see that redemption. Fantasy, redemption. Let me be blunt. Political ideology, redemption. Ambition, wealth, power, redemption. You have to choose. You cannot commit your life to fantasy without falling into the pit that Ecclesiastes has just spent 12 chapters describing for you, saying everything down there is vanity. You need to escape this pit. So, Solomon gives a command, and I say Solomon gives it because he's the human author of this. Remember, chapter 1, verse 1, he's identified here the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Israel. That's Solomon, right? He's the human author, but there's another author. And that author is described, actually, at the end of this book. Look at verse 9, who this author is. Besides being wise, the preacher also taught the people knowledge. He didn't just have wisdom in himself, he gave it. He taught other people knowledge, weighing and studying and arranging many proverbs with great care. The preacher sought to find words of delight, and uprightly he wrote words of truth. The words of the wise, this book says, the words of the wise are like goads, and nails firmly fixed are the collected sayings. They are given by one shepherd, another king, another preacher, another son of David, another author. That's where these come from. Ultimately, my son, beware of anything beyond these. Of making many books there is no end, and much study is a weariness to the flesh. The end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing, whether good or evil. Whose words are these? This is Jesus, the Son of David, the King, the one shepherd. And he's saying to us, I have given you a lifetime, one. What are you going to do with it? I'm measuring my story in lifetimes, generations. That's my basic unit of time. What are you going to do with yours? So back to the command that bookends this little passage in Ecclesiastes 12. Look at verse 1 and verse 7. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth. Your Creator. Before all of this stuff breaks down, before all of that, remember him. Remember him in your youth. Before you spend your life, remember the source of your life. Go back to that and make that the reference point for everything that you do. Remember your Creator. This is far and away, it's not even close. This is the most revolutionary command ever given in the history of the world. Why do I say that? Because in order to keep this command, you have to say something which in the modern world is not just sort of passed over and forgotten. It is actively opposed and rejected as a hateful thing. This command says, your whole duty as a race of human beings is to fear God and remember your Creator. So think about that word Creator. It's just exactly what it is in English. In Hebrew, in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, primarily Genesis 1, there's this word, bara, create. It's really only used of God, and it's only used in this tense in Hebrew that says he did it independently and for no other reason than that he did it for his own purposes, because of his own power, his own glory. He created out of nothing. So this is the same word just turned into a kind of, it's nominalized. Remember your bara'er, your Creator. And in order to remember that, you have to remember that your life is bound up in his design and his purposes. And in saying that, you're saying something that everyone around you would say, that's nuts. That's wrong. That's a limitation on your life. It's a limitation on your freedom. You should behave as if there are no impediments. There are no limits. There's just you and your potential and your goodness, your authenticity. That's all there is. So let that be your guide. But if you remember your Creator, what you're saying is that there are limits. You're saying there's a design that locks you in and enslaves you. You're saying that there's a course for your life that you didn't set. That's what you're saying. You can't make Disney movies on this passage of Scripture. Remember your Creator. They never say that. What do they say? Follow your heart. No limits. You set the terms. It's your story. So do whatever is inside of you, because that's where the good is. Ecclesiastes says, no, there's no good there. No good. Your Creator's good. And if you remember Him in the days of your youth, then suddenly everything in this world ceases to be vanity and becomes something else. It becomes something that is redeemable. So think about the rubble of an old barn where you tear down. I used to see this in Pennsylvania where they make so many buildings out of stone. And there would be an old barn on the property, and it was run down and wrecked. Vanity. Couldn't do anything with it, but the stone's still there. So if you redeem that stone, you can rebuild it. Same stones, same parcel of ground, you can rebuild it into something else that has a new purpose, a new life. It's better. And so Ecclesiastes is saying, you have the chance to see your life redeemed, rebuilt, out of the same stuff that is wrecked right now. Same exact stuff. Same stuff in your mind, same stuff in your emotions, same ambitions that have failed, same relationships that have fallen apart, the same desires that you have. You take all of that that's wrecked and you rebuild it into a new thing, new life. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth before all of this happens. Why would you do that? First of all, you would do that because this is a command. The whole duty of man is to fear God. Duty, the only dirty word left in our culture. This is a command saying, stop where you are, stop pursuing vanity, and remember your Creator now. Embrace those limits now. Embrace the design now. Cry out for the redemption of what is fallen now. But the other reason to remember your Creator in your youth is because you will return to Him. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before all of this stuff breaks down and you run out of your lifespan. Verse 7, now the bookend to this, and the dust returns to the earth as it was. Your body dies, and watch this, and the spirit returns to the God who gave it. This is a very important verse about how people in Israel viewed death. A lot of people would say they viewed death as the end. You go to the grave and that's it. That is not what Solomon says here, at least in this passage. What he is saying is, yes, your body goes into a grave and dust goes back to dust, but your spirit returns to the God who gave it. You go back to God. Why should you remember your Creator before the lifespan runs out? Because you're going back to your Creator. You're going home. That's why. That's why the command is given in this way. The whole cosmos is returning to the hands of God who created it for His purposes, and He's going to refashion it. There's going to be a new creation. So, why should you keep this command? Because it's just pragmatic. You're going to face Him again. You're going to see Him again. You're going to talk to the one who gave you life. And that conversation is either going to go one way, where every deed is brought into judgment, and the judgment is you used your lifespan to defy me, to ignore me, to push against my limits and destroy my design. Or you used your lifetime to acknowledge me. You named me as your creator. You used your lifespan to say, my life is about who God is and what He has designed me for and what He designed me to do. It's about the redemption that He is bringing to me in Christ. He is rebuilding me. That's what my life is about. That conversation may go like this: well done, good and faithful servant. You got it. And what did you get? You remembered your Creator. You said, that's what my life is about. I am returning to Him. And so this command is about timing your life. I'm using time here as a verb. You got to measure it. Measure it out and ask, what are you doing with it? What is this for? How much time is left in my lifespan? And of course, the reality is we don't know. We don't know how much time we have in our lifespan. But we do know that our one life is exceedingly precious, valuable, beyond price. You, who you are, who God designed you to be, is by far the greatest treasure in this room. And this room holds all kinds of people whom God vested with that kind of value. So what are you doing with it? You can't know what to do with your minutes, your hours, and your days until you recognize that your lifespan, your lifetime, is the basic unit of measurement. Why should you keep this command in your youth? You might be saying, well, I'll do it later. Later has a way of creeping up on you. There's also another problem with later. I'll call this problem incoherence. So many people before you, young people, have said later. And their life indeed shows, the story of their existence shows this kind of wandering circular pathway that doesn't really go anywhere. And having traveled that circuitous path to no place, what they would say to you is, don't go no place, because that's what I did. Instead of living an incoherent life, set your course now and stick to your course. Because then, at the end of your life, when it's your body in that casket on the way to the grave, then there will be a story about who you are in Christ. Notice present tense, who you are. A story that is consistent all the way through. You can live that kind of life. And I'm saying you should. I'm saying you should aim at it. It is the way to avoid the vanity of this world and to be redeemed out of it. So let me give you an example. It is less and less likely that I am ever going to play James Bond. It's true. I think the world has lost something because of this. I think it's really too bad. There's a vacancy right now, and I kind of wonder, maybe they'll call this time, George Lazenby. It could happen. But I am kind of aging out, right? It's just less and less plausible. So I look at this opportunity receding, and I say, well, maybe my life was never about that. Maybe my life was about something else. And so I'm not drawn away by the vanity of something that, for all my delusions, was never going to happen at all. So my heart isn't pulled away by this. You say that's frivolous. Is it? What's your dream when you look in the mirror? What's your future? What power, influence, wealth do you imagine? That's why you should remember your Creator in your youth. Do it early. Set that course and stick to that course. Because there's vanity talking to us. There's vanity talking to me constantly. And we can follow it at any time. Or we can make that revolutionary statement, I was designed for a purpose. I have a lifespan, and however long or short it is, I am going to give glory to my Creator. You need to learn to time your life and follow your Creator in your youth. I've done a lot of funerals. I've done some funerals for old people who died having lived that coherent life, and you could look back and you could say, this is a story where he remembered his Creator in his youth, and he kept going, one foot in front of the other. I've done that funeral. It's awesome. It's amazing. I've done funerals for babies. And you think, well, but they didn't get to live. The babies I'm thinking of two twins, baby boys. They lived 6 months. Their mother and father and siblings loved them. That's a powerful thing. We are all glue. Every single person adheres to the people around them with that kind of love. It is so precious. And yes, they did not make a profession of faith, and they didn't live their life, and they didn't suffer all the things that we suffer. But they are part of the coherent commitment of their parents who remembered their Creator in their youth and continue to follow Him. That mother told me a few years after that funeral something that amazed me. God, she said, is so good. I've done funerals for college students. One in particular, 800 people crammed into a church because this young woman remembered her Creator. And in her short life, it was a coherent, potent, powerful story of testimony to who Jesus is and what He does. It got noticed. It was a valuable life. And she is still valuable in the presence of her Creator, where she has returned. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, because your life has value. And your identity has value. And you will return to your Creator. The only question is, how will you return? And with what sort of life? What sort of story? That is in your hands. You want to look at the time you have in this life wisely? Look at it from that perspective.